We're ready there, Your Worship.
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our council meeting, June 30th, 2020. Council, apologies. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our council meeting for June 30th, 2020. The agenda is there before you. I call for a motion, moved by Councillor Power and seconded by Councillor Ledwell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Now you also see before you, Council, the minutes from June 16th, 2020. Any business, or sorry, any errors or omissions?
No.
Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the acceptance and the adoption of the minutes from June 16th. All in favor? Contraminded, and that motion is carried as well. Is there any business arising, Council, from those minutes? And please quote the item in the action report or the minutes. Go ahead, Councillor Antle.
Your Worship, it seems to be a regular thing. Number 160, Director Collins. Any word on Hotel Mount Pearl?
Aha.
For me,
Yes, please.
we've been back and forth with our legal counsel. Our legal counsel have written the counsel of the property owner and looking at their insurance and trying to get some feedback from Intact, which is their insurance carrier, to find out the status. And I received some correspondence as of about 2:20 today. So we're actively working on it, but that's the status as of now.
Thank you. Most of the residents are asking that question every day, Jason, so I thought maybe we'd let them know in public so they'd be prepared.
Understand completely.
Thank you.
I have one, Your Worship. Number 187, vehicle break-ins. Just wondering if, Dr. Collins, is there any update on that? Because I noticed another post on the Powers Pond Facebook page today.
There is. Our enforcement division continue to work with the RNC. They've made progress. I probably shouldn't say too much more than that publicly because it is an active investigation.
I understand. As long as we're on it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Council, arising from June 16th? Hearing none, we'll move on now to section 2, motion regarding Councillor Power. Councillor Antle, please.
You're muted, Councillor Antle.
Well, I went on with a little bit. I really don't like some motions you like to do. This motion is not an enjoyable motion. It's regarding Councillor Andrea Power. Whereas Andrea Power, a councillor of the city of Mount Pearl, was advised of the nature of a complaint dated May 4th, 2020, which alleged that Councillor Power breached the City Council Code of Ethics policy and was in conflict of interest contrary to Section 22 of the City of Mount Pearl Act. And whereas Council conducted an investigation into the complaint, Councillor Power has been represented by legal counsel and has been provided with the opportunity to address these allegations in the notice of complaint. And whereas Section 22(1)(a) of the Act provides the councillor shall not vote or speak to a matter before the council or committee of the council where the councillor has an interest in the matter, distinct from the interest arising from his or her functions as a councillor. And whereas Councillor Power engaged in a course of conduct and communications during the period from on or about October 9th, 2019 to on or about May 1st, 2020, in connection with the then Chief Administrative Officer, Steve Kent, CAO Kent, who was on leave at the subject of a harassment investigation. And the course of conduct and communication pertained to CAO Kent's harassment investigation, which Councillor Power had decision-making responsibilities, as well as in relation to other city businesses. Now, therefore, it be resolved that Council has determined that Councillor Power's actions as disclosed by her course of conduct and communications with CAO Kent constitute a breach of the City Council Code of Ethics policy. Council has determined that Councillor Power has a conflict of interest in connection with the harassment investigation of CAO Kent. Councillor Power did speak to and or vote on the matter of harassment investigation of CAO Kent at all privileged council meetings at which Councillor Power was in attendance. and which related to the harassment investigation of CAO Kent between October 2019 and April 2020, in which Councillor Power had an interest distinct from any interest arising from her functions as councillor, which is the violation of Section 22(1)(a) of the Act. Pursuant to Section 22(a) of the Act, the officer of Councillor Power is hereby declared vacant for failing to disclose the conflict of interest in a matter disclosed by council, and I hereby move.
It is moved by Councillor Antle and seconded by Councillor Fry. Any comments or questions? Councillor Power.
Your worship, I would like to have leave to respond to the complaint.
I believe we've had discussions and the complaint has been addressed during the investigation. There has been ample opportunity and there was response already.
I believe that my duty to this people of the city of Mount Pearl deserve to hear me speak in a public forum, and I believe that I have earned that respect.
Would you like to make a statement?
I certainly would.
Please go ahead.
As council is aware, I have provided a detailed written response to the notice of complaint that was made against me, and I reiterate for the record that I have never acted in a conflict of interest and removed myself from the process as there may be reasonable apprehension of bias. I have nothing to gain or lose by the removal of the former CAO, and in the event that I am now removed from council, I shall be appealing the matter to the Supreme Court immediately. At this time, I also want to advise that I have submitted a complaint pursuant to the Respectful Workplace policy, as well as the harassment-free workplace policy, against the mayor for comments he has made, which in my opinion constituted behavior that included bullying and inappropriate comments and behavior that has significantly reduced my value and contribution to council and to the city of Mount Pearl as an elected female councillor. I'm going to begin with how my journey into public life began with the city of Mount Pearl. In the summer of 2017, I was contacted by several residents and a sitting city councillor in Mount Pearl who expressed their support and encouragement for me to run for the city council election in the fall. At that time, I had not considered running, so I was shocked that so many people had taken the time to reach out. I was humbled and a little surprised, and I started to think maybe I should. A month or so passed, and my husband Blair suffered a stroke at the age of 53. Our world changed in an instant. And on that day, June 19th, 2017, we had a new path. The notion of running for council at that point was the farthest thing from my mind. And since my only goal was to support my husband while he recovered, his recovery went remarkably well. He wasn't permitted to fly or drive, but the doctors were amazed at the positive outcome, and so were we. All was right in the world again. We could breathe a little easier. Later that summer, when returning home from a trip with family from a cousin's wedding, and with time to pass on the flight, I watched the movie Hidden Figures. For those who are not familiar with this story, it is based on the actual events of the United States space race in the 1960s and 3 African-American women who were instrumental in helping NASA achieve their goal of putting a man in space. During their space race with the Soviet Union at the time, the employment divisions at NASA were still segregated by race and gender. So all African-American women worked in one unit together, separate from all their male and all their Caucasian co-workers. Not only did these women persevere under extremely difficult circumstances of racism and sexism, but they prevailed. The space race was effectively won by the United States of America. Without the contributions of these 3 women, who are the heroes of this story, this moment in history would never have happened. We all have a story, and that is the story of how I decided to run for city council in Mount Pearl. I was inspired by that film and the courage of these women, and I thought to myself, if 3 African-American women in the 60s can fight prejudice in the form of racism and sexism for the greater good of their country, then surely in 2017, as an educated white woman living a privileged life in Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada, could find the courage to put my name on a ballot. And so I did. I have always felt compelled to speak out against injustice, and I will continue to do just that long after today. It is no secret that the past 9 months have been extremely difficult for council, staff, residents, and taxpayers of the city of Mount Pearl. What many people do not know is that this investigation was not the first challenge faced by this city council. In an effort to be transparent and accountable as a public official, it is incumbent upon me to discuss some of the issues that have hampered our city council over the past few years. As elected officials, it is our responsibility to ask questions and to ensure that every dollar spent at the city of Mount Pearl is spent with the best interest of the taxpayers in mind. This is no doubt a great challenge, since there are many differing opinions on what are essential and non-essential expenditures. As I began my term on council, I knew I would face some challenges, and I expected that council members would not always agree on every issue that was presented. But what I did not expect to be faced with was the intimidation and bullying around the council table. I noticed early on that the mayor would often talk over councillors, and in particular female councillors. Being new to council, I initially and privately discussed this with other members of council, confiding in them and wondering if I was overreacting, second guessing myself as a woman. It appeared that I was not. Both my male and female council colleagues who I spoke with expressed similar concerns. So I began to speak up, and often, when the mayor would interrupt myself or other councillors, I would simply interject and advise that I wasn't finished speaking, or I felt another councillor wasn't finished. The mayor would sometimes apologize, give leave to that councillor. However, repeatedly apologizing for this constant behavior started getting old and demonstrated to me his unwillingness to listen to others. I left countless committee meetings countless committee meetings from council feeling defeated and undervalued. Many nights I would be so overwhelmed that I would cry as I was leaving. I felt so alone. And there were other councillors who expressed the same to me and encouraged me to keep going. No other councillor spoke up as much as I did, and I thought that it was just me. Each time I would convince myself to stay strong, to believe in myself, and I would get through it. Then I began to notice an alarming pattern. One of bad behavior that I feel I now need to share with you today. During this term of council, I have been made aware of, or I have been witness to, instances of misogyny by the mayor. I've been granted permission by a resident of Mount Pearl and a recognized community leader in our city to share her story. She would like to remain anonymous, but is willing to share her experience should that and when that becomes necessary. At a community event open to the public and attended by many members of council, the mayor clearly made an oinking noise at her when she reached for a cookie, which were available to everyone in attendance. This woman reached out to me shortly after the event, clearly upset by this behavior, and wanted to discuss it. She ultimately decided at that time, due to personal reasons, not to pursue it. She did not file a complaint with the city of Mount Pearl, as I had suggested she should do. I respected her decision, and it was hers to make, not mine. I did not pressure her. I respected her decision then, and I still respect it to this day. It was quite disturbing to me, and I have struggled to stay silent on this particular issue. I am also aware of another incident when the mayor quite inappropriately referenced the weight of one of my female council colleagues at the city of Mount Pearl, remarking that she was more of a tater rather than a small fry. This hurt my soul to the core. It upset me, and it still does to this day. I'm sorry, I need a minute. The mayor has also on numerous occasions referred to another female councillor in a negative way when discussions regarding the provincial government have come up, indicating that due to her professional career and her position, she didn't need to speak or offer an opinion as it was already predetermined what she was going to say. Her voice was taken away from her. On another occasion, I was seated for lunch at the municipality's Newfoundland and Labrador conference last fall. At the table were the mayor and deputy mayor, as well as some former Mount Pearl City Council members. During dessert, the mayor indicated to a female seated at the table next to me that he could hear the town of Torbay oinking when she was served extra helpings of dessert. I was again highly offended, but when all the men at the table laughed, along with the mayor, I remained silent, shocked and appalled by this behavior. I feel compelled to share these inappropriate acts displayed by the mayor because I myself have been the victim of misogyny from the mayor. To continue to stay silent would be a disservice to all women who suffer in silence. I know because I am, or I was, one of them. I want every woman who has ever felt this way to please know that I am here for you and I will be your voice. My feelings of desperation and defeat were tempered by all the great work we were doing at the city. In my first year on council, our management team, working in cooperation with the union team, had finalized a union agreement for the first time in many years prior to the expiration date of that agreement. We celebrated with a staff barbecue and a softball game. It was so much fun. Many staff members approached me that day to offer congratulations on what a great job council and the CAO were doing. The morale at the city was very low when I started my term on council. It was one of the items on our priority list that we wanted to tackle. There are so many amazing people who work at the city of Mount Pearl. They are passionate, they are committed, and they take pride in the work that they do. We have such a high level of service in Mount Pearl that is so well known, and that is thanks to them. Snowmageddon and the COVID-19 pandemic have shown us how unbelievably dedicated our staff are. And for that, I am profoundly grateful. But all days were not wins. We dealt with allegations of fraud and misconduct and theft, specifically in the Department of Corporate Services. Appropriate action was taken with the full support of the entire City Council. This one issue alone has likely cost the taxpayers well over $100,000. Following this, it was discovered that there were many issues surrounding the collection of business tax. After another internal investigation, it was revealed that there was over $2.2 million in unbilled and uncollected taxes. Council gave full support to staff so that they could resolve this as quickly as possible. It was also decided with council support that Brenda Aylward, a trusted retired city employee, would be hired on contract to help correct the significant loss of revenue. Brenda was already familiar with the system of tax collection and was able to help determine the total loss to the city and find ways to work with our business community to bring our accounts up to date. I am pleased to say, as one of the members of this committee with corporate services, that this process is almost complete. And processes have been implemented to avoid this error in the future. A third and one of the most troubling issues discovered was a significant health and safety issue at the Glacier Arena. There was clearly a major potential fallout and risk of impact on the public as well as staff. There was an incident which involved an ammonia leak, and a city employee, in their haste to react, did not acquire the appropriate PPE, personal protective equipment. A further investigation commenced on the root cause of the leak, and an independent safety audit was commissioned. It was discovered that proper preventative maintenance of the multi-million-dollar chiller unit had not been done in years, 7 years to be exact. As a counselor, I was shocked. I have a background in science and spent part of my professional career working in an environmental laboratory for 4 years. Safety was taken very seriously, and maintaining daily maintenance logs of all of the equipment was paramount. This was a private business, and obviously we valued the protection of our employees. As the supervisor of that laboratory, it was my responsibility to check the logs at the end of the day to ensure that they were in compliance. If they were not, the staff member for that shift was given a written reprimand. That's how serious we took these deficiencies, and it was placed on their file. It was noted that any oversight in the record keeping of the maintenance logs could jeopardize the overall safety of every employee and client. The gross negligence and failure to maintain the equipment at the glacier, which led to an ammonia leak, could have been catastrophic. This arena is used by the public, by thousands of people, adults and children alike. Home of the Blades, Mount Pearl Minor Hockey, and the Mount Pearl Paradise Skating Club, as well as numerous other groups. An investigation costing the city thousands of dollars was immediately started. Deficiencies were uncovered, equipment was repaired, and standard operating procedures were designed by our staff, again, with the complete support of council. Council quickly began to realize that our city was not being managed in the way that it should be. Our senior management team was called to task and asked to answer some very difficult questions. Some members of the management team were terminated as a result. Most of these terminations were recommended by their immediate supervisors or directors and supported by the CAO. They were necessary actions brought forward to the CAO and approved by council. After riding out the storm of several major internal issues, council, with the support of the senior management team and the newly formed marketing, communications, and economic development team, began to rebrand Mount Pearl. The Consider It Done campaign and the Welcome to Mount Pearl video was getting great feedback. So much so that Mount Pearl was the recipient of many awards, directly and indirectly. Things seemed to be getting back on track. Mount Pearl was doing better, and as a councillor and as a council, we could not be more proud of all of the achievements. Then on October 1st, the walls came crashing down. I, along with my council colleagues, attended a public council meeting. During this council meeting, in attendance were all council members, Mayor Aker, Deputy Mayor Locke, Councillor Stoyles, Councillor Ledwell, Councillor Fry, Councillor Entel, and myself. And in addition, CAO Steve Kent, Director of Community Services, Jason Silver, Director of Community Development, Jason Collins, Director of Infrastructure Public Works, Jerry Entel, and City Clerk, Mona Lewis. They were also in attendance. The meeting proceeded as per usual, and you can view the records of this meeting online through the website by going to City Hall, clicking on council and the date. At 6:10 p.m., the meeting adjourned. All council members gathered their belongings to leave chambers and began making their way to the Sir James Pearl Room. This was for our regular committee of the whole meeting and is a standard practice after most public council meetings. The mayor stopped myself and other council members prior to leaving council chambers to advise that we were having a privileged in-camera meeting. To the best of my knowledge, no other council member other than the mayor and deputy mayor was aware of the reason for this in-camera meeting. The CAO and directors were asked to go to their respective offices until called upon. Once gathered in the Sir James Pearl Room, we were introduced to Michelle Willett from Cox and Palmer. We were advised that the mayor and deputy mayor had sought a legal opinion on a sensitive HR issue without prior approval of the entire council. What unfolded next can only be described as complete abuse of power by Mayor Aker and Deputy Mayor Locke. Remaining council members were advised of allegations made against the CAO under the city's respectful workplace policy. The allegations had been delivered to the mayor and deputy mayor approximately 2 weeks prior to the meeting on October 1st. The mayor and deputy mayor had clearly decided they would spend taxpayers' dollars without advising council, and they would seek legal advice on behalf of council. On September 24th, as indicated by supporting documents in the way of invoices provided to the city of Mount Pearl, the mayor and deputy mayor met with Michelle Willett, the lawyer at Cox and Palmer, to discuss this matter. To reiterate, the meeting was held without the knowledge of the remaining 5 council members, and a legal opinion was acquired. I have an invoice before me that is itemized from Cox and Palmer related to the meetings that the mayor and deputy mayor had with Ms. Willett prior to the knowledge of council, the remaining council members. September 24th, 2019, meeting with D. Aker and J. Locke, review policies. September 25th, 2019, email exchange with D. Aker, re-update. September 28th, 2019, review remaining policies, review complaints, review research, re-ATIPA disclosure. September 29th, 2019, prepare for and attend meeting with D. Aker and J. Locke. September 30th, 2019, draft opinion, revisions to same, telephone call with D. Aker and J. Locke regarding same. September 30th, 2019, retrieval of cases. September 30th, 2019, research on voting requirements for City of Mount Pearl Council. All of these meetings were held without, and discussions were held without the knowledge of 5 other members of Mount Pearl City Council. The charges for these meetings were $4,467 before taxes. That was money that the mayor and deputy mayor approved spending without the consent of the remaining 5 members of council. I believe that this is wholeheartedly in contravention of the City of Mount Pearl Act. Section 30 reads, authority of council. The mayor is subject to the direction and control of the council and shall abide by a decision of council. Unfortunately, we were not privy to this information. Therefore, we could not decide on it. All 5 remaining members of council were completely blindsided by this turn of events. Ms. Willett then provided a legal opinion regarding the situation. We were permitted to read the opinion and it was collected at the end of the meeting. I do not have a copy. Under duress, 5 council members were forced to make a very difficult decision in a short amount of time. I have documentation to support this, and I will be reading that into the record a little bit later. The evidence of this night will always be with me. And while I would like to share them with the public, I have been advised by my legal counsel that to do so could be seen as a breach of confidentiality. I can tell you that I have had many sleepless nights since then, and I expect to have many more going forward. It was a traumatic event that has changed the way that I conduct myself at the City of Mount Pearl and in my day-to-day life. This workplace investigation has been flawed since the beginning. And this council has been operating as a dysfunctional one since last fall. There is no trust among council members, and there is an overall lack of respect from and for the mayor. Several days after this clear display of abuse of power, the 5 remaining members of council met to discuss the appalling situation and the disrespectful way that 5 members of council were treated by the mayor and deputy mayor. Collectively, we presented the mayor and deputy mayor with a series of motions in a private meeting. This has been included in the record and will be provided to the Supreme Court during my appeal on the decision to declare my seat vacant. On October 8th, 5 members of council, Councillor Lucy Stoyles, Councillor Andrew Ledwell, Councillor Isabel Fry, Councillor Andrea Power, and Councillor Bill Antle presented this document with a series of motions and a record of voting on the motions to Mayor Dave Aker and Deputy Mayor Jim Locke. The first motion was regarding the appointment of the investigator. It was motioned that a week has now passed, an investigator had not yet been appointed. It was noted that it is imperative that matters like this are handled expediently and in order to serve the best interests of all parties. We should not delegate our authority to appoint the investigator. Council has a responsibility for this process. The motion was that council meet with legal counsel, Michelle Willett, that was selected and engaged by the mayor and deputy mayor within the next 48 hours to receive an update on the identification of potential investigators. It was then decided that while council would not appoint the investigator, they would approve the investigator. This was agreed to by all 7 members of council. Item number 2, the objectivity of the investigator. Under the whistleblower procedure, it states, the investigator shall conduct a thorough investigation with impartiality and objectivity and in a manner that shall ensure fair treatment for and to the extent possible the confidentiality of the respondent and disclosure. In order for there to be impartiality and objectivity, the investigator must not have any prior knowledge of the respondent and the discloser. This is particularly challenging in this circumstance because of who our CAO at that time is, a very public figure who had a very public life. So the motion number 2 was that council approve an investigator who has no prior knowledge of the responder or the disclosures, and it is agreeable to the respondent as well. This was signed by 5 council members: Lucy Stoyles, Isabel Fry, Bill Antle, Andrew Ledwell, and Andrea Power. 2 council members, Mayor Aker and Deputy Mayor Locke, voted against the motion. Number 3, potential violation of harassment-free workplace policy. Under the policy, it states, if the chief administrative officer is the respondent of violating the policy, the matter will be referred to the mayor. Then the mayor and council will immediately commence an investigation by contracting the investigation to an outside source who specializes in workplace harassment investigations. The mayor and council will evaluate each case and determine if the chief administrative officer remains in the workplace during the investigation with or without pay. The mayor and council will review the report and recommendations from the external investigator and render a decision in a timely manner. This decision is final. It is important to note that this did not happen. All 5 members of council who were not included in this process from the beginning made decisions under duress without all of the necessary information being properly considered. In fact, it was made known to us that after the CAO was escorted out of the building by the mayor and deputy mayor, that his computer and building access was revoked before he had even met with the mayor and deputy mayor. The onus is upon council to follow policy and procedure, all of council. And in light of that, we asked to evaluate the cases and revisit the decision made the previous week. Motion number 3 was that council advise Michelle Willett that any and all future instructions on behalf of the city of Mount Pearl must come from 2/3 of a majority of council. And further, that mayor, deputy mayor, and Michelle Willett be directed to deliver copies of all the complaints to council And further to that, council immediately review the cases with no documents leaving the room. And further to that, council make an informed decision on how to proceed, ensuring enough time for appropriate consideration. This again was signed in agreement by 5 council members: Lucy Stoyles, Isabel Fry, Bill Antle, Andrew Ledwell, and Andrea Power, and against by the mayor and deputy mayor. It was also clear from the policy and procedure that the mayor and council will immediately commence an investigation. We learned that last week the mayor and deputy mayor were in possession of the complaints for approximately 2 weeks prior to informing council. Council has a responsibility to immediately review the cases and immediately commence the investigation. At this point, 3 weeks had already passed. So motion number 4 was that the mayor and deputy mayor fully and immediately inform council of any further developments related to this matter. And further, that council acknowledge that no decision-making authority has been delegated to the mayor or deputy mayor on behalf of council. This was signed with all 7 members of council in agreement. The employment status and location of complaints. In order for council to effectively evaluate each case and determine an appropriate course of action, it is imperative to know the identity of the complainants and to review their complaints in full. If, for instance, both complainants are former employees, then there may be no reason for the CAO to be off work. If, for instance, both complainants work in the same location, the possibility exists for the CAO to work from another location. Depending on the circumstances, it may be appropriate for the CAO to work remotely while also avoiding contact with the complainants. Motion number 5 was that council fully evaluate each case and subsequently determine whether the CAO should remain on leave or if alternate arrangements should be made. This again was supported by 5 members of council: Lucy Stoyles, Isabel Fry, Bill Antle, Andrew Ledwell, and Andrea Power, and voted against by the mayor and deputy mayor. There were some items that were raised during this meeting that weren't motioned on, but that were brought forward. The treatment of the CAO from the week before. Most members of council were unaware of several unfortunate circumstances that unfolded last Tuesday. It is unacceptable that the CAO was treated like a criminal as a result of 2 workplace complaints that have not yet even been seen by most members of council. The approach taken may jeopardize the integrity of the entire process. Council did not approve the overly harsh treatment of the CAO. Further, we expected to see the CAO before he left the building. That was discussed in front of the mayor before he went back to the mayor's office the second time. The CAO advised us that his phone and email had stopped working when we were permitted to go see him that same night. Access had been cut off, and more importantly, we had been disrespectful to an employee who had done great work on our behalf for the last 2 years. What is most troubling is the perceived notion that staff members were aware of this action to be taken that night before the remainder of council. The mayor announced in the media that he was going to lead an executive committee that would consist of himself, the directors, and the city clerk. This was not approved by council. Given the current workplace dynamics and having the mayor further involved in the day-to-day operations is not in the best interest of the city. The motion was made that the directors be advised that there is no executive committee And further, that if the CAO remains on leave at this time, directors will be responsible for leading and managing their respective departments, keeping the acting CAO and council informed of matters requiring council's attention. And further to that, the committee of the whole will serve in the capacity for which the mayor's executive committee was intended. This was supported by all 7 council members. With respect to media, motion 8 says that council agrees to adopt the following communication statement on the CAO's leave. The CAO is presently on an approved leave of absence. Council requests that his employment privacy be respected. This was also agreed upon by all 7 members of council. The last point made at this meeting was that it was disappointing that the mayor and deputy mayor waited 2 weeks to bring this matter to the attention of the remainder of council. It was also disappointing that last week's meeting was conducted in the manner it was. It is also disappointing that the mayor and or deputy mayor had involved other staff and predetermined the outcome of council's decision. And we wish to express our disappointment with the conduct of the mayor and deputy mayor. While we are not proposing a motion on this issue at this point in time, we do ask that you reflect on your decisions and actions. It is necessary to respect the role and the authority of council. As per section 30, the mayor is subject to the direction and control of the council and shall abide by a decision of council. In hindsight, we should have demanded an alternate course of action, or at least a further discussion on all options. We agreed that the matter had to be dealt with, but the approach was wrong. But hindsight is 2020. And at the time, my fear of retribution by the mayor and deputy mayor was significant. While this is not an excuse, it is the truth. And I feel it bears significant weight in this process. Throughout the course of the investigation, during regular updates via the city's lawyer, the mayor and deputy mayor would constantly harass and bully myself and another member of council, making endless comments about our personal relationship and history with the CAO who was on leave. One evening in particular became very heated, and I left visibly upset and in tears, so much so that I had 2 other councillors reach out to me to see if I was okay. My ethics were being challenged, which I felt was quite ironic since the mayor and deputy mayor clearly violated policy and procedure right from the beginning. The intentions of the mayor and deputy mayor became increasingly clear early in May. I received notice via the acting CAO's office, copied to the mayor regarding my alleged conflict of interest, claiming they had proof via Facebook messages, private Facebook messages between myself and the CAO who was on leave. I have cried an ocean of tears due to the constant stress, bullying, and harassment I have experienced from the mayor and deputy mayor. My family life and my professional life has been affected. How could it not be? I have nightmares almost every night, reliving the events of October 1st. I have sought professional help to deal with the mental health issues I am experiencing as a result of this trauma. It is important to note that one member of council had declared a conflict of interest in the investigation early in the process due to a family connection. Councillor Bill Antle is Director Jerry Antle's brother. He declared conflict of interest in the process, and that will become important later. Myself, Councillor Ledwell, and Councillor Stoyles were all sent similar emails with similar allegations of conflict of interest in early May, all for having conversations and contact with the CAO during the course of the investigation. I have been made aware of one other councillor who had contact with the CAO via private electronic messages while he was on leave, and I am unsure why they were not treated the same way. I'm also aware of another councillor who communicated quite frequently with the CAO via text messages after declaring a conflict of interest, which included discussions directly related to the investigation. Forced to get legal counsel myself, I submitted my response to the conflict of interest allegations, and I maintain that I am innocent. During the course of my dealings with the city's lawyer and through my own lawyer, it had been discovered that Councillor Stoyles was no longer considered in conflict of interest. However, myself and Councillor Ledwell still are. And again, Councillor Antle, who had previously declared conflict, was now back at the table. When Mr. Kent was served with a notice of motion to terminate on June 16th, 2020, Councillor Ledwell and I were excluded from this correspondence. Again, this may be a clear violation of the City of Mount Pearl Act. We learned this in an email that was sent to all of council from Mr. Kent himself on June 22nd. In that email correspondence, it was also noted that the notice of motion for termination and follow-up meeting with all councillors except Councillor Ledwell and myself was scheduled for June 26th. All councillors should have been given the opportunity to attend this meeting. As Councillor Antle had already declared conflict regarding this matter as it relates to the City of Mount Pearl, how was it that he could be included at this stage? To vote to dismiss the CAO, according to the Act, requires two-thirds vote of all council members in office. This equates to a minimum of 5 of 7 councillors. The mayor and deputy mayor, I believe, needed Councillor Antle to vote. Therefore, they allowed him, stating that this notice of motion for termination was not with respect to the investigation. The mayor, deputy mayor, and select councillors obviously made the decision to dismiss Councillor Stoyles' allegations of conflict of interest as well, since she was now allowed to vote. And of course, they also needed her vote. I challenged the mayor and deputy mayor with this. If Councillor Antle's recusing himself from the investigation based on conflict of interest was not a consideration with respect to being included in the notice of motion, then why were Councillor Ledwell and I excluded from the process? We have been clearly penalized and treated unfairly. This process is clearly flawed and unfair. It has come to a significant cost to the taxpayers of Mount Pearl. In the interest of transparency, I have confirmation that, to date, legal fees associated with the workplace process and the notice of motion to terminate the CAO have exceeded $50,000. To the taxpayers and residents of Mount Pearl, I am truly sorry. I am sorry for not finding the strength to speak up sooner. I am sorry for letting you down. But I maintain my innocence, and I will continue to fight for you. And I will be your voice for as long as I possibly can. I am appealing the decision of council. And my first step in calling for justice for the citizens of Mount Pearl is this. I call for the immediate resignation of Mayor Dave Aker and Deputy Mayor Jim Locke. Their behavior has been unethical, immoral, inappropriate, and in violation of the City of Mount Pearl Act and various city policies. They should do the right thing and step down immediately. I will continue to fight for my place around the table. I will speak out against harassment and bullying, and even louder and with more passion and resolve than ever before. The City of Mount Pearl deserves better. The residents, the taxpayers, and the staff deserve better. And Mr. Kent, as an employee of the City of Mount Pearl, deserved better too. Thank you.
Your worship and members of council, I would like to say that I am in full support of what Councillor Power has just said. I do not support the motion brought forth by council tonight, but I second and fully support everything that Councillor Power has just said, including the immediate resignation.
I won't be resigning, but because of the complaint filed today with respect to respectful workplace, I do recuse myself from this vote, and I turn it back over to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will not be resigning either. Are there any comments or questions to the motion that's currently on the floor? None? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Sorry, I'm just swiping the screen here now to see who got their thumbs up. All in favor of the motion? You can see that, Lucy. Councillor Stoyles, can I see? Let me see. They're not
Yes.
on my screen. Are you in favor of it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Contrary minded?
I'm contrary minded, Deputy Mayor.
Okay. Given the fact that you're not permitted to vote on your own conflict of interest, you're permitted to vote, but your vote will not be counted in this circumstance. So the majority of councillors voted in favor, so the motion is passed. I would request now that, given that Councillor Power's seat has been vacated, that she leave the meeting.
I have one question, Deputy Mayor.
Yes?
Am I not allowed to stay for the Councillor Ledwell's?
No, my understanding is your seat is vacated. You're asked to leave the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda. I know Mayor Aker has recused himself, so when he comes back in. But the next the item on the agenda is the motion regarding Councillor Ledwell. I'll turn it over to Councillor Ansell, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This motion has to do with Councillor Andrew Ledwell. Whereas Andrew Ledwell, a councillor of the City of Mount Pearl, was advised of a notice of complaint dated May 4th, 2020, which alleged that Councillor Ledwell breached the City of Mount Pearl Code of Ethics policy and was or is in conflict of interest contrary to Section 22 of the City of Mount Pearl Act. And whereas Council conducted an investigation into the complaint, Councillor Ledwell has been represented by legal counsel, and he has been provided with the opportunity to address the allegations in the notice of complaint. And whereas Section 22(1)(a) of the Act provides that the council shall not speak, shall not vote or speak to a matter before the council or committee of the council where the councillor has an interest in the matter distinct from any interest arising from his or her function as councillor. And whereas Councillor Ledwell engaged in a course of conduct and communications during the period from and about October 9th, 2019 to on or about May 1st, 2020 in connection with the Chief Administrative Officer, Steve Kent, and was on leave at the subject of their harassment investigation. And the course of conduct and communications pertaining to CRO Kent's harassment investigation, which Councillor Ledwell had decision-making responsibilities, and as well as the relations to other city business. Now, there be resolved. Council has determined that Councillor Ledwell's actions, as disclosed by his course of conduct and communication with CAO Kent, constitute a breach of City Council conduct of ethics policy. 2, Council has also determined that Councillor Ledwell has a conflict of interest in connection with the harassment investigation of CAO Kent. 3, Councillor Ledwell did speak to or vote on the matter of harassment investigation of CAO Kent at all privileged council meetings at which Councillor Ledwell was in attendance, and which related to the harassment investigation of CAO Kent between October 2019 and April 2020, in which Councillor Ledwell had an interest distinct from an interest arising from his function as a councillor, which was violation of Section 22(1)(a) of the Act. 4, pursuant to Sections 22(a) of the Act, the office of Andrew Ledwell is hereby declared vacant for failing to disclose a conflict of interest in the matter discussed by Council. And I hereby move.
Deputy
wish
Mayor,
to-
I have,
Oh, sorry.
I'm back at the table, folks, because I
Okay.
recused myself from the first one.
I-
So just,
I wish to speak.
yeah, I was going to say moved and seconded. Go ahead, Councillor Stoyles.
I just want to say that no doubt this has been a difficult time for everybody around City Hall. I will be supporting the motions brought forward. In my opinion. I don't know if the act is right or how the act is written, but because of the act, I have no, I'm going to be supporting, the legal ramifications of this, because we've received legal opinions, and I will be supporting this. But in my opinion, sometimes I'll look at the punishment and how great the punishment is. I no doubt, as Councillor Power mentioned, the sleepless nights and the stress of everything that has gone on, and the trust at City Hall. So I just wanted to say for the record that I will be abiding by the act that was put forward to us, but no doubt it has been a very difficult time for everybody involved, and I'm sorry to see that it has gone this far. I was hoping that things would be solved, but anyway, that's basically what I wanted to say, Your Worship.
Councillor Ledwell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I certainly have a statement as well. I'd like to speak to the motion. To say that I am disappointed by the actions of this council is a vast understatement. And in fact, the unprofessional conduct of this council continued right up until this afternoon, when I was literally informed, I literally learned of the intent of what was to happen this evening. I learned of it through a throwaway email where you, Mayor Aker, requested updates and notes to a speaking statement that you were going to put forward this evening. So, thanks for the heads up, Your Worship. For me, I feel that the citizens of Mount Pearl are being misled by this council, and their tax dollars are being handled in a fiscally irresponsible manner by the council of the city of Mount Pearl. Starting an avalanche of events which began in October with the fact that the former CAO, Steve Kent, was put on leave, that started a trend that has created a situation with the city of Mount Pearl where the issues continue to pile up, the problems continue to rise, and I can no longer stay silent. I must now blow the whistle on a variety of transgressions by this council. We are supposed to be the custodians of this city and the taxpayers' purse. We are supposed to be the guardians of this city in which I have grown up, and for which I have worked very hard in some capacity for 3 decades. However, the actions of the mayor, deputy mayor, and the rest of this council have left me with no choice. My protests have fallen on deaf ears, and so in the interest of the city and its residents, I have written a letter to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and asked him to intervene in this situation. I have outlined the financial concerns which have happened in the past 2 to 3 years on this watch. I've identified the investigation that was taking place into fraudulent activity of approximately $100,000. I've identified the fact that $2.2 million in business tax was not collected by the city of Mount Pearl. And it doesn't stop there. I have also observed several transgressions when it comes to the investigation process with the CAO, former CAO Steve Kent. The fact of the matter is that third parties have been retained without council approval, and there have been suggestions of burying expenses from citizens and putting them outside the purview of legislation. There are a number of procedural concerns as well. The process related to former CAO Kent has been manipulated and abused, and decisions are being made without quorum. Efforts have been made to exclude those who speak up through bullying and intimidation, and there is a refusal to act on the wrongdoings of some while aggressively pursuing complaints against others. I have asked the Minister of Municipal Affairs to take over custodianship of the city. The severe nature of the situation, the lack of appropriate governance, and the reckless handling of multiple issues are too much to ignore. In addition, I have contacted the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary as I've been presented with evidence of Facebook messages being monitored, copied, and distributed from at least December 2019 until May 1st by someone at City Hall. I've been called in front of a kangaroo court by this council regarding the content of private and personal Facebook messages with former CAO Kent. These messages were sent from my personal device. I can honestly say that for as long as I have carried an iPhone issued by the City of Mount Pearl, it has never had the Facebook app or the Messenger app on it. I have been effectively spied upon for a period of several months. I view the surreptitious nature of this surveillance to be a heavy invasion of my privacy. I have endured a process that is wrought with inappropriate timelines. I have been denied access to the individual complaints that were brought forward against me this evening, and the identity of the complaints have been hidden away from me, although, Your Worship, I believe it to be you and the Deputy Mayor. The interesting thing about this whole situation is that Mr. Kent, in his submission from last week, identified 5 councillors, 5, who have had dealings with, conversations with, and spoken to Mr. Kent about the investigation. So it warrants the question, why 2? The remaining members of council are motivated solely to declare my seat vacant, to declare Andrea Power's seat vacant, and to put away with anybody who spoke up and defended anything to do with former CAO Steve Kent. I love this city. I love this city as much as any of you do. It breaks my heart what's happening today, but someone needs to stand up to the bullying and the intimidation that's happening behind closed doors at the City of Mount Pearl. Someone needs to do the right thing. I cannot allow the cover-ups to continue by the people who the residents of this city have put in positions of responsibility. This council is failing this city. I will not rest. I will actively pursue all avenues to ensure that those responsible for the mess at City Hall are held accountable. And I will continue to stand up for the citizens of Mount Pearl. I have worked hard for this city for almost 3 decades, with the last decade being as a councillor. The disappointment that I feel for our city today is tremendous. I love our city, and I will continue to work to make it better. Simply put, I maintain my innocence. I am not in a position of conflict of interest. And through an appeal, I will be taking this kangaroo court to the Supreme Court Trial Division as soon as remotely possible. Thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll call a question, please. Thumbs up, if you will. We have all thumbs up. Thank you very much. Councillor Ledwell, your seat is declared vacant, having been found in conflict of interest. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, Councillor Antle again.
Your Worship, there's a motion regarding the dismissal of Steve Kent. Whereas Section 83 of the City of Mount Pearl Act provides the procedure for which the city manager may be dismissed. And whereas the Chief Administrative Officer of the City of Mount Pearl acted as a city manager as established by the Act. And whereas Steve Kent was provided with a notice of meeting and a notice of motion on June the 16th, 2020, in accordance with Section 83(2) of the Act. And whereas during the period he was absent on leave and the subject of an harassment investigation, and as detailed in a letter of June 16, 2020, Steve Kent engaged in a course of conduct and communications with two councillors on matters directly related to the harassment investigation and other city business, which provide just cause for his dismissal. Be it resolved that Steve Kent be dismissed as Chief Administrative Officer of the City of Mount Pearl, and I so move.
It is moved by Councillor Antle and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Any comments? All in favor, thumbs up, please. Okay, motion is carried. Thank you very much. Now, the next item on the agenda is the Community Development Committee. Starting
Your
with-
worship, if I could, before you
please do.
proceed.
Deputy
Yes.
Mayor, you have a statement to read, and
Yeah.
where I recuse myself from the Councillor Power vote, we're going to have you read the statement on behalf of council. And while you read that, I'll recuse myself again, and we'll be back to start with community development shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, worship. As a deputy mayor of the city of Mount Pearl, I knew I would face some difficult times. Taking on a leadership role in a municipality comes with deep responsibilities and a commitment to make every decision every day based on the best possible information and the overall value of doing the right thing for the people of the city of Mount Pearl. 2020 has not been an easy year. We have all experienced the same things. An historic storm followed by this unprecedented pandemic that none of us knew how to manage. But we have persevered so far. And I wish to thank the people of Mount Pearl for their patience during the first 6 months of 2020 that brought us some big challenges. Over the last week, it has become public that our CAO, Steve Kent, will not be returning to his position. Today, council voted on the motion to dismiss. I will not get into the many actions that led to this day, but I will tell you that we remain focused on the policies and the legislation that guide us in our city. We are placed in these roles by the residents of the city, and we are expected to uphold the policies and the legislation. However, today, we are faced with a further troubling situation. 2 members of council and Mr. Kent have been in communications via Facebook Messenger on matters related to the investigation and sharing of confidential information pertaining to the investigation. It is important to note that only messages between the CAO and these 2 members of council were viewed. The messages between the CAO and members of council were viewed. The communication was accessible to the city via a city-owned iPad that had been previously issued to Mr. Kent. Our IT policies are very clear that any content that is available on a city-owned device is subject to access to information legislation and should be treated as such by all staff. As we stated last week, it was very obvious that the nature of the messages was not only inappropriate for the CAO, but 2 sitting councillors were also involved in the communications. The councillors in question were found to be in conflict of interest pertaining to the harassment investigation of Chief Administrative Officer on leave, in breach of the duties of the office as a member of council pertaining to the investigation and decision-making responsibilities associated with the harassment complaint involving the CAO, and to have released confidential council information to the CAO. Our policies and procedures are in place to guide us and to ensure we maintain a value system of integrity, fairness, honesty, and respect. Myself as deputy mayor and the remaining members of council believe it is incumbent upon us to fully denounce such actions and act accordingly. Our city council code of ethics policy was breached. The City of Mount Pearl Act mandates that council, quote, shall by resolution declare vacant the office of an elected councillor where a councillor speaks to or votes on a matter in which he or she has a conflict of interest. Today, we are bound by this act, and it is under this legislation that we have declared the seats of Councillors Power and Ledwell vacant. We fully recognize the impact that this will have, but we believe we must work hard to repair the damage that has caused and try to rebuild trust with our employees, with our union, and with the residents of Mount Pearl. We will immediately begin to work towards restoring a healthy and safe work environment and a welcoming and trustworthy community. We have much work to do, and tonight we make a public commitment to understand what is needed to regain positive relationships. We also make a public commitment tonight to focus once again on Mount Pearl as a wonderful community, a place to raise our children, and proudly take care of one another. We deeply regret being forced to take such action. And I'll await counsel for the mayor to come back to the meeting. And then I'll, sorry?
I'd just like to say something to that.
Oh, please, Councillor Fry.
You know, just to be clear, and to further to the points you were making, as council, as elected officials, we were elected to uphold the legislation, policies, and procedures that are put in front of us. And our decision has to be based on facts of those legislations. Having said that, that does not mean that doesn't mean any disrespect to the councillors involved. You know, they're good people and just made decisions that they felt was best at the time. So I just want to say that, because I know that, like, Councillor Ledwell, for example, spent the last 10 years to the city, and Councillor Power as well, the last 3.5 years, and not to take away from their contributions. I just want to make that clear. But our decision was based on the information that we had in front of us and bound by the legislation and the policies and procedures.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Anyone else before I turn it back to the mayor? Okay, thank you, Councillor Fry. I'll turn it back to you, Mayor Aker.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Community Development Committee, Councillor Fry or Deputy Mayor, who's speaking on the use of bicycles? Bicycle bells, apologies.
I'll start today.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay. First on our agenda this evening is the use of bicycle bells on walking trails and parks. It's just a reminder to the public who use the city's trail system to stay alert and be respectful of other users. More people are getting out for walks now and run or bike ride, and not everyone is on their best behavior. Cyclists are asked to ring their bell as they come close to others before passing. And if a cyclist doesn't have a bell, it's important to speak up when attempting to pass others. And that's just for the safety of all the trail users.
Just a quick note on that, Councillor Fry. I do ride my pedal bike on the trails quite often, and I do have a bell, right? And most times when I ring my bell, most times the residents or the walkers will say, "Thank you very much." I mean, there's nothing worse than coming up on someone on a bike, and surprisingly, they don't appreciate it very much. So I think, you know, a little warning certainly goes a long way. Thank you.
Absolutely, courtesy. Next on our agenda is speeding on city streets. So as a reminder to bicyclists, motorcyclists, and other drivers to slow down. Speeding puts many at risk, including pedestrians, cyclists, and other drivers on the roadways, as well as the drivers themselves. So obey the speed limit for your own safety and for the safety of others. And this is the time of year when the sun is shining and people are out more. You know, just a reminder for people to play it safe and watch the speeding on city streets. Okay, third on our agenda this evening is the City of Mount Pearl Canada Day celebrations. With Canada Day tomorrow, of course, it's going to look a little bit different than our usual celebrations. Due to COVID-19 pandemic and the guidelines in place, the city's Canada Day celebrations will be offered through the provision of virtual resources to maintain a sense of community pride and connectedness in an online environment. The city will at 10:30 stream on Facebook Live the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 36 Canada Day Parade for the viewing of residents. Be sure to visit the Team Guju Complex parking lot, as the city will host a drive-in movies. Actually, here it says Stand By Me, but I think that was changed, wasn't it?
Correct, Councillor Fly. It's Patch Adams. So
Patch Adams, right. And that starts at 9 o'clock. Also, activity packs that provide links to different resources for families to use to celebrate our country in their own way on Canada Day, which will include arts and culture, history and geography, physical activity, and culinary. Please visit the city's website for more detailed activities, and there will be lots to choose from. Our staff have worked hard and compiled a fantastic list of activities and things to do to celebrate Canada Day on your own way. So happy Canada Day to everybody that's watching and everybody out there. And I'm going to pass this over to the Deputy Mayor for the continuation of the Community Development Report this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Just two remaining items here, Your Worship. Next is the aquatics and fitness guidelines. The opening date is July 6, 2020. As Councillor Fry just said, our staff have been working extremely hard during the pandemic as we move through the various stages or alert levels. And they continue to work on the fitness and aquatics guidelines and safe operating procedures to ensure the safety of all members, staff, and spectators for the programs that will be offered this summer. The opening date for fitness and the pool is scheduled for July 6th. We are still looking through the specific guidelines that will be put in place, and they certainly will be posted on our city website, and the public will be notified as to the procedures as we come upon July 6th. And that's for information purposes. And the last one for us, Your Worship, are the building permit and occupancy permit listing for June 15th to June 26th of 2020. And the committee is recommending that the building permits issued for the period of June 15th to the 26th, showing a total construction value of $386,225 be approved, and further that the occupancy permit list be accepted as presented, and I so move.
It is moved by the Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Fry, that all those permit listings be approved for the period June 15th to 26th. And I will call the question. All in favor? Contrary-minded, carried. Thank you.
That's it for our committee report, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, next item is Infrastructure and Public Works, Councillor Stoyles. And if there's any motions, I would ask the Deputy Mayor if he could be the seconder, please.
Okay, so the first one, Your Worship, is the request for qualifications for traffic engineering services. We received 4 companies, and the committee is recommending that the Infrastructure and Public Works approve the list. And during for 2 years, 2020 and 2021, that these companies will be requested to be awarded individual work. And I guess approval council. Do we need a motion for that? Or?
I think we should. It is a request for qualifications, and I guess bring it to the public chamber. We are.
I so move.
Yeah. Okay.
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Stoyles, and also seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Assuming there was no discussion, then contrary-minded, carried. Thank you.
The next one is, of course, our glacier eco-chill system, the summit and the heat pump. And we are recommending that this will be sourced by the people who we bought the system off of, which is Charmo. And we're recommending that they will be awarded the contract. And from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2025, and in the cost of $49,292.45, including tax. And I so move.
It is moved again by Councillor Stoyles and seconded by Deputy Mayor Locke. Any questions here, folks? This is a very specialized piece of work, and we need to ensure, as referenced earlier on, safe work environment. I think Simcoe is certainly up to that. And the committee has done a wonderful job in researching the options and providing this recommendation. I'll call the question. All in favor? And those opposed? And carried. Thank you.
And the next one is similar, soul sourcing contract for the Summit Center unit. And of course, this is a one-of-a-kind unit, and we're recommending again that it will be sole sourced to the people who we bought it off of, and in the estimate cost is $125,822.95. And this was already allocated in our budget, our capital funding budget in 2020. And yeah, the work will be continuing being done under the defibrillator ES service immediately. And I so move.
Again, moved by Councillor Stoyles, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Any questions, Council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary-minded, carried.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next one is a little bit different, is the proposed change order to the contract on Topsail Road CPR 20007. And Madam Peering already had been approved to do this work, and they were approved for $7,226,688, and we're recommending that we will make a change to that. And what they're looking at doing is increasing the scope of the work, because this year we're getting such really good prices on paving, and that we're recommending that we do an extra 3-meter lane mill fill to the full asphalt surface recap from Crozan Drive to Commonwealth Avenue, which is 1,800 meters, Commonwealth Avenue to Farrell Drive, which is 695 meters, and Commonwealth Avenue to Topsail Road intersection. And the estimate cost for this, over and above the scope of the work that we already had approved, is $3,311.40. And I'm recommending that we will make those changes.
Thank you, Councillor.
That's
Moved by Councillor Stoyles and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Councillor Antle, please.
Just a quick note, 2 questions. I guess it almost looks like we're getting double of the work now done this year because the price of asphalt is less. Right? Does that mean, and when will it start? Is that correct? We're getting double the amount now for the same amount almost?
I guess who's in the best position to answer that? The director's not here tonight.
Okay, well, when are we going to start this project?
Apparently the project is already, they've already spoken to the thing, and the work, some of the work, Madam Peering had already started some of this work because they've already approved the contract. So the added stuff will be added to the end. So my understanding, the work is already started. We had our committee meeting. I don't know if it's already started or will be starting in the next week. And well, we met over a week ago. So they said about a week before it was going to be started. So it should be in place now and started. The extra work will be added on. Of course, they're only going to be informed after we approve it tonight that the extra work will be added on, and we've contacted them about pricing and things like that, that we could add it on to the end of the contract because of the prices we're getting, and it's going to be good value for the city is why we decided to go this way.
Thank you.
There's a couple of points here, Your Worship, if I could.
I agree, Councillor Stoyles. Yes, please, Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Stoyles described it properly. As it says here, initially it was just to do a 3-meter wide mill and fill, but now we're looking at doing the full lane. So it'll not just be 3 meters, but the full lane now of recapping. And just to note there, I think sometimes it's hard to read these commas. I think Councillor Stoyles may have mentioned millions, but it was 726,000.
Yes.
Yeah. And because there's dots and commas there. So
Dots and commas there.
yeah, 726,000 was initially, and then the modified scope of work is 303,000. So I just wanted to point that out there as well, Your Worship.
Well said. Any further comments? I'll call the question. All in favor? And those opposed? And that motion is carried too. Thank you.
The next one, Your Worship, we have is the traffic signal upgrade intersection, and we received 2 qualified bids, and we're recommending that it be awarded to the lowest bidder, Madam Peering, $220,282.50, and we're recommending that. And then I think there was an issue with a credit of change order of $54,900 for HSC to be within the budget, and that's within the budget as well. And I so move.
And again, moved by Councillor Stoyles. Thank you. And seconded as well then again by the Deputy Mayor. Any comments, questions? Okay, I'll call for the motion. Oh, sorry, Councillor. All in favor?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
All in favor?
Question.
And contrary-minded, carried. Thank you.
The next item is our janitorial services, and I believe, Your Worship, you had concerns with this one. Did you want us to defer this one and bring it in committee the whole? Or did you want us to bring it forward this evening? You
Well,
mentioned in a committee of the whole that you had a concern that maybe we should go to tender. I'm just
Well, I guess-
asking a question.
First, I'd like to just ask, was that a debate at the, at your committee meeting, you know, about going to tender? Because seems like to me, this is unlike fixing refrigeration plants or ammonia cooling and all that. This is fairly common in our region, let's say. So I'm just curious, is this to get it done sooner rather than later to get a better
Well-
price because of the historical price already embedded in the contract?
In the contract, your worship, we could go an extra 2 years, and
Right.
we were proposing to do 1 year at a time to continue on with the contract. So what this is janitorial services, and when we met in committee, we talked about because they're not open and because a lot of our buildings have been closed for a number of months, that we were going to make some changes, that they wouldn't be doing the floors and they wouldn't be doing certain things, like they wouldn't have, and all this is included in the thing, that they wouldn't have, you know, every quarter they would do a whole bunch of extra work. And of course, because the buildings have been closed, a lot of that work hadn't been done. So the contractor who has it now, the director had met with them and talked about making some changes, and they were going to give us, I guess, for a better word, a break on a lot of the things that hadn't been done, because it won't need to be done, and we would move forward to the agreeing with this contract that was in place for 1 more year, so that we could continue on with Callaway's for a period July, first this 2020 to 2021, and we could go for 2 years, but we're only recommending going from 1 year for 1 year first, and then next year we will have a look at and see if we're going to go to tender. In 2 years' time, we got to go to tender anyway. But in the contract, in the tendering, when we did it in the beginning, we could have done this, what we're doing tonight, and approved an extra year or an extra 2 years. But we're only recommending 1 year, your worship. So when you mentioned it, I didn't know if you wanted to bring it forward, pass it on to another, to have a discussion, because we didn't bring it in committee at all. We were just bringing it forward to public. So I have no problem moving the motion as is there tonight.
Yeah, I'll accept the motion. So moved by Councillor Stoyles and also seconded by the Deputy Mayor. No, I think we have the right to do it, and I think we're going to get good value out of it, because the price is basically going to be the same, and we're going to get more for the more done that's targeted towards the new environment that we're working and living in. And this is not a fixed price contract, Councillor, as I understand it. It's more an hourly contract. So at the end of the day, what we're approving really is rates for the next year. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. And what they will be doing is a lot of where we've been doing a lot of cleaning, sanitizing buildings and everything, and is a lot more that kind of stuff because of COVID. And the contractor have agreed to continue doing that at no extra cost, because it was a lot of stuff that they hadn't done and didn't charge us, even though they could, is the contract, they could certainly, I guess, bill us for everything that was included in that contract. So that's why we thought it was a good value to do it for 1 year, your worship.
Any other questions, folks? Thank you, Councillor. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? And those opposed, and that motion is carried. Thank you.
And the last couple of items we have is just updates, public work update, that bulk garbage will be starting on July 6th. And our regular collection for bulk garbage will resume again in September, providing that all alert levels related to Corvac is in place, and the general maintenance is underway as regarding the levels of the Corvac. And of course, line painting is 90% completed. Actually, it's probably more than 90% completed now. Badcock Place upgrade design closed on July 8th. It will close on July 8th. Fort Street is completely finished, so that will be off our list. And Crack Seal is completely finished. Asphalt and concrete is 50% done, and Bradley and Glendale Avenue is expected to be done by the end of August. And that is my report, Your Worship.
Your Worship, can I just make one point there before?
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Stoyles. I just want to make a note, because a resident did ask of me your worship, about Topsail Road, the line painting, if you're heading, say, west on Topsail Road from Dodge City towards our industrial park or business park, the line seemed to stop at Farrell Drive, and then from Farrell Drive onward. But that relates to what we talked about tonight with the asphalt work that's going to be ongoing there. So we didn't see it prudent to lay lines down, only to tear them up again in a couple of weeks. So once that that asphalt work is done, we will then complete the lines in that area. So I just wanted to put that out there for the public, your worship.
That's
Thank
the
you,
same,
Peter.
that's the same, your worship, as Bradley Place and a number of streets that's going to be worked on. Like, we wouldn't go in and paint lines if we're tearing it up and doing work there. So I guess we would consider it common sense stuff, but we wouldn't consider doing it when it's going to be work and continued workers in the area. It wouldn't make sense to do that.
Yep, you are absolutely right. You only paint it one day and perhaps tear it up the next. Okay.
That's right.
All right, let's move on to the Corporate Services and Economic Development Committee report, and Councillor Antle will be taking the lead. Councillor Fry, you'll be the second tonight, please.
Your worship, now we got to pay some bills. Councillor Stores will spend lots of money. I'll take care of the bills. I have one here invoices for approval for the same for this time frame for $282,730. And a couple of big ones we have there is one is for the Metro Bus for $111,985.54. And the other one is the City of St. John's tipping fee for $43,777.41. And I so move.
Moved by Councillor Antle and seconded by Councillor Fry. Any questions, folks, regarding the invoices for approval? Of course, these are all the items in the last week or two, or sorry, in the last, week or so, I think 2 weeks, and it is all everything over $5,000.
And
All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary-minded? Carried.
number 2, our payment register and our P card report for the period of June 17th to the 26th of 2020 for a total of $896,846.59. And for our purchase cards, that's our credit card for our May 6th to June 5th, total of $17,101.17. And a couple of huge ones there is for CIBC Mellon for $415,496. That's for our pension plan for our employees. And there's a couple there for Bella Line, $24,000. And I so move. No move needed.
No motion needed. Thank you, though.
And number 3, our business engagement response, our economic development team has been doing a great job under the leadership of Cassie Pittman and Jeremy Schwartz. I used to work with a guy, Jeremy Atridge. Sorry, Jeremy. He contacted most of our business within the city of Mount Pearl and checked to see how they were getting on through COVID. It was a great report, I must say. And, most of the businesses were very responsive. I'm happy that we as a city were reaching out to see how we could help. And most are doing, there are challenges, but between the provincial and federal government, things are moving quite well. Most of the businesses were quite happy with our taxes, that we're not going to charge any interest on our taxes for the rest of this year. So it was a good report done by Jeremy and is available for council at any time. And that's just for your information.
And that report, Councillor Antle, is available, or Cass, Director Pittman, that's available to the public as well if they want to see it?
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of a very long, I can't say an easy meeting, folks. We have some new business. I'm going to start with you, Councillor Stoyles.
Oh, thank you. I have just a couple of things. First of all, I want to pass along my sympathies to the Earl and Noseworthy family. Bill Earl passed away. Actually, he was laid to rest today. And my neighbors are about Liz Noseworthy, who would be, Elizabeth would be the stepdaughter of Mr. Earl. And of course, Catherine, who we all know from the Church of the Good Shepherd and a great volunteer in our community, is his wife, and want to pass along my sympathies to all the family, to the Earl family and to the Noseworthy family. Also, I wanted to give an update to the residents of Mount Pearl regarding Smallwood Drive. And I should have mentioned it when we did our report. I thought it was going to be something in the report, but I wanted to let the residents know that we haven't forgotten about Smallwood Drive and the issue with Light and Power. Director Antle has been working very closely with Light and Power, and hopefully at the next meeting we will have an update on how we're moving forward with that. And I'm assuming we are going to be planning on having consultations with the residents of Smallwood Drive and area. But I just wanted to let the residents know that we have not forgotten about it, and we will be moving forward hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But the Light and Power wanted to have some further time to talk back and forth with the directors and see what avenue they will be doing and what the challenges will be. So the public down on Smallwood Drive will certainly have a chance to be heard, as we promised, Your Worship. And last thing I wanted to mention was Canada Post and the super mailboxes. And at our committee meeting, we were informed that Canada Post have completed all the work as far as they're concerned regarding the tear up in front of their mailboxes and whatnot. Director Antle informed us that he was not pleased with a lot of stuff that had happened, and he will be in contact with Canada Post. And there's a number of issues regarding the grass being torn up by the contractor who did it, maintenance to private land, and whose mailboxes adjoined the Canada Post thing. And of course, all the sand that was in front of the Canada Post office mailboxes, sand that they weren't supposed to use in the city of Mount Pearl, because we've asked them not to use sand, and they continue to do that over the past 2 or 3 years. So we will be discussing that again and what actions will be taken. And Director Antle is going to be in contact with Canada Post, and I wanted to just inform the public that, especially if they got a mailbox and they're not happy with what they see in front of the mailbox or in front of across from their homes and whatever, that we are going to be working and talking to Canada Post again to ensure that everything is back the way we want it, not the way Canada Post thinks it should be. But there is a number of issues according to Director Antle, and we will be addressing it and bringing it in the committee of the whole for discussion, and then back into public, Your Worship. And that is it for me.
Well said. Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Locke.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have any many items, but I do want to take this opportunity. It has been a difficult meeting tonight, but I do want to take the opportunity to wish you, Your Worship, and your lovely wife a happy anniversary. I know it's not the way you wanted to celebrate your 30th anniversary, but I did want to acknowledge you and your lovely wife. So I wish you many more years of happiness. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, it's 30 years today, and I'm so after the meeting, we'll get together for a little bit of R&R, as they say. So thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, before you move on, I also want to mention that Shirley Boone is having a birthday, and she's going to be 75 on Friday, I think it is, and just wanted to wish her a happy birthday publicly. She's chair of our Seniors Independence Program and has been involved in doing a lot of volunteer work with Children's Wish and a lot of different groups in our community. And I publicly wanted to wish her a happy birthday. And also to you, Your Worship, enjoy your anniversary.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Fry.
The only thing I was going to mention tonight is also happy birthday to Shirley. Her birthday is actually on Thursday. She works so hard for the seniors of our community, and we're very lucky to have her, and I hope she has a wonderful, wonderful birthday. That's it for me.
Thank you much. Councillor Antle, please.
I only got a couple of things to Your Worship. I certainly was going to wish Shirley a happy birthday, but I'm not as brave as Councillor Stoll, so I certainly wasn't going to say how many birthdays. So happy birthday, Shirley. Just a quick note here is that the Ross-King Memorial Library opened up on Monday for curbside pickup and delivery. They're trying it right now for a trial and see how it works out, but you can certainly go on the website and take a look, and you can order your books and drop off your books. It's a good system they have set up. They had it rolling out Tuesday, please just order your books. They'll be dropped off at the table, and at the same time, you can drop off any books. There'll be no fines handed out because, you know, they certainly understand things are working. And if everything works well this week, they're certainly going to try to open up the library with social distancing in the next few weeks. So stay tuned. And that's everything from me, Your Worship.
Very good. Yes, again, I'd like to make the comment. It's been a very long day and a very long meeting, and we'll forge ahead. Good to see all of council here to the end of the council meeting. Folks, I think I'm going to postpone committee of the whole for a week, and I want to just wish our staff an early night off as we make our way out of public council meetings. So Mona, to you as acting CAO, and to our directors, Cassie, Jason, who are here tonight, Jerry, and all the staff. I hope you have a good evening and a good week, and we look forward to working with you going forward. So thank you very much. I'll take a motion to adjourn, and moved by Councillor Stoyles and second by Councillor Antle. We are adjourned. Thank you.